I was looking at this site that's got all kinds of free images you can use the other day, and I found an old map of a city here in central Texas, and at the bottom of the map there was all these little businesses listed. The map's from 1894, and so I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I did a little research on those businesses and see if any of those buildings are still there. Well, I did the research, and it sort of took me down a couple of rabbit holes that I wasn't expecting, but hey, that's always the case. So, why is it that in the 1890s, Waco, Texas became known as Six-Shooter Junction? Why did rumors fly all over the state of Texas that you could stop off the train if you had a couple-hour layover in Waco, get some lunch, and watch a gunfight before you got back on the train to go to wherever your final destination was? Well, let's take a look at the old map, take a look at the old businesses. I'm going to go to Waco and see if I can't find some of these locations, and we'll put them in here. And let's see if we can figure out how Waco got this bad reputation. So come on, let's go. Okay, this is the map that I was telling you about, and it's got some businesses you can see there on the bottom, listed across the bottom. I would imagine they paid for advertising, and this was just something maybe they handed out at the train station or something like that to people who were new to the area. The pictures on both ends are Baylor University, and if you know anything about Baylor or anything about Waco, that just doesn't really need a lot of explanation. Baylor plays a big part on the community here. This picture was some bulk land for sale. It said 1,000-acre tract or something like that on the bottom. This is the Pacific Hotel. Lots of history here, and this hotel may play a big part into why Waco got its reputation, and we'll go into that. This is the H.C. Reiser and Company prescription drugstore. Was in direct competition with a drugstore that got real famous, and we'll go into that as well. Here's one of his bottles. This is Providence Bank, and there's a story that goes along with not so much the bank, but the man who built the bank, and we'll get into that. W.K. Finks was a grocer who also wound up dabbling in real estate. There's a whole section of Waco they call the Finks section, and the Finks area, and it used to be Southern Heights, and we'll see if we can find out where that is. Okay, we'll start off with the Provident Bank building. Provident Bank building is located at 4th Street in Franklin, close to downtown, well, actually part of downtown Waco at the time. The main owner of the building was Provident Bank. It also was an office building, was a large stone structure, had a lot of offices. Insurance companies were in there. There was newspapers, reporters in there. There were city offices in there. So it was sort of a business hub for Waco at the time. I got some notes here. And it was completed in 1890. Was regarded as the biggest and finest office building in the Southwest. So it was a pretty big building. It was there until 1959 when the building was torn down. It fell into disrepair. They thought that the upkeep of it had gotten too expensive and there wasn't enough office space being rented out of it anymore, so they just decided to tear it down. One interesting fact about the Provident building is the contractor who built the building took some of the leftover stone from Provident building and built the Cottonland Castle, which is now owned by Chip and Joanna Gaines, and I'll go by there and see if I can get a picture of it to show it to you. So it's made out of some of the same materials that the Provident building was, and it's still in Waco. So that's it for this. I'm at the corner of 4th and Franklin, and this is where the Providence building would have once stood, as far as I can tell. Right across the street here, see that brick building there? That would have been where the Pacific Hotel was. The Providence building was where I'm standing now, and I'm looking towards the Pacific Hotel. So those gunfights we were talking about would have happened right on these streets here, and we'll see if we can find the spot. Okay, I'm here at the Cottonland Castle. You can see it behind me. This was built by the same guy that built the Providence building, or had a lot to do with that. He was a stone contractor here in Waco in the late 1800s. And I got out, I took some pictures and a couple of short video clips. So we'll go into more of that while we're watching the other stuff. Catty corner from the Providence building would have been the Pacific Hotel. The Pacific Hotel was built in 1882, and it was also at Franklin and 4th. It was Waco's best hotel at the time. It was the city's first building with an elevator in it. It had 150 rooms. It was a 5-story brick hotel, and it was filled up most of the time at that time. There were 6 railroad lines running in and out of Waco during these days, because Waco was the largest hub for cotton transportation in the United States, bar none. Cotton was king, and a lot of cotton was moving through Waco. The silos that Chip and Joanna Gaines built their place at over there were used to store cottonseed and cottonseed oil. So cotton was king in Waco at this time, and there was a lot of business going on, and this hotel was the place to stay. I think I read somewhere they charged $2.50 a night for the premium rooms, and that included 3 hot meals. So now we're getting into downtown Waco, Austin Avenue. This is the main sort of historic district of Waco. Beautiful down here. There's all kinds of, it's been really redone in the last 20 years. Over here on the right, you got the Hippodrome Theater. They still have concerts there and stuff, and they've expanded it, restaurants in there, everything else. A lot of historic buildings, a lot of history here. And this is a very walkable area of the city too. If you come to visit, take a stroll down Austin Avenue and you won't regret it. It's really nice. In 1892, a railroad conductor named Fowler just decided to come to Waco on a pleasure trip for the weekend. He had a lot too much to drink, I suppose, and he was on one of the upper floors of the Pacific Hotel and started raising all kinds of heck with everybody. And the manager of the hotel's wife, she went downstairs and said, "Hey, you got to do something about this guy upstairs. He's causing a ruckus." So he goes up there to talk to the guy. Well, the guy pulls a gun out, but he's so drunk he pulls it out and shoots a bullet into the floor at the same time. The manager jumps down the fire escape, goes back down to his office, grabs his gun, goes back upstairs. This time when he gets up there, the guy pulls his gun again, gets one shot into the manager. The manager puts 4 bullets into the guy. The guy dies. The manager lives to fight another day. And this was the first of a string of incidents in and around the Pacific Hotel that sort of were reported on in nationwide newspapers and such. So we'll get to the next one. November 19th of 1897, a guy named G.B. Gerald and another guy named J.W. Harris start blazing away at each other at 4th and Austin, which is a block over from 4th and Franklin. Everybody in the hotel heard the shots, and they kill each other. And the way the newspaper put it at the time, they saved the overburdened courts of having to, figure out what happened because they both died. And that created quite a sensation as well. That was the second big gunfight in Waco in a couple of years. But the real one that put him on the map was still yet to come. Okay, little background on this next one. There was a guy named William Cooper Braun, and he owned a paper. He was a publisher called Braun's Iconoclast. I believe his office was in the Providence building across the street from the hotel. Everybody, from what I can understand, hated this guy. He liked to sensationalize things, and he liked to go after people he didn't like and use his paper and his publication. And he didn't like minorities. He didn't like Baptists. He was always trying to badmouth people that were part of the Baptist church. And he especially didn't like Baylor University. And he was always going after Baylor. He was making stuff up, being sensational, claiming there was sex scandals, claiming there was all kinds of stuff. Anyway, some of it may have had an ounce of truth to it, but he would, like if someone worked at Baylor and their relative got in trouble somewhere, he would somehow try to tie it to the thing, and a lot of people were really just fed up with this guy after years and years of this going on. He got kidnapped one time and beat up by 4 guys, and so he was used to trouble, and he just kept dishing it out, and so on April Fool's Day 1898, right outside the Pacific once again, Braun's walking down the street, and another guy, last name Davis, pulls a gun and shoots Braun in the back as he's walking by. Well, Braun flips around, and he's got a pistol, and he empties all 6 rounds into Davis. Davis dies on the spot. Braun dies later that evening, I believe. They both wound up dying. So in some years later, in 2009, Braun had a very ornate headstone in Waco Cemetery there, and it said truth on it, and a bust of him and all this. In 2009, somebody actually stole his headstone out of the cemetery. He was still hated, 100 years later. So, anyways, and that's those three incidents tied together pretty much what gave Waco this reputation as being a rough place in the 6-shooter Junction moniker. Yeah, we're talking about 3 incidents over about a 5-year period. 5 people wound up dying. One of them survived, the hotel manager. And just try to compare that to what goes on today in cities, right? I mean, a lot of big cities, murder doesn't even make the front page of the news. Well, it's not even on the evening news. It's just not a big enough story unless multiple people were killed. But back in those days, it was just, especially back east, people wanted this, they liked to sensationalize what was going on in the West and, sort of portray it as the wild, wild West. And Buffalo Bill Cody's doing his Wild West shows and stuff at the time. So that had a lot to do with how it got portrayed. Now let's move on and go check out the rest of Waco. So again, that's where the Pacific Hotel would have been. And that's where the Providence building would have been. Now, the newspaper writer we were talking about, his office was in the Providence building. And he would have been walking down this way. Let's go see what we can find. So he gets to about here. He's walking along. And all of a sudden, the other guy shoots him in the back. He spins around, unloads his gun into the other guy, who falls into the open door of a cigar shop that was there and dies instantly. And then he collapses and dies later that evening. It says, the city of Waco in the 1890s divided into 2 armed camps over the caustic criticism of William Cowper Braun. In his magazine, gifted writer, Braun attacked many organizations, especially Baptist and Baylor University. This controversy sparked a duel in 1897 between Judge George Bruce Gerald and James W. Harris, a Baylor partisan. James E. Davis met Braun here with a half block of the early fight and shot him with a Colt 45 revolver. Braun returned the fire. Both men died the following day from their wounds. So this is it. H.C. Reiser was a pharmaceutical company, a druggist, and he had his business at 3rd Street and Austin. I believe where his business is located was very close to another drugstore called the Old Corner Drugstore. We'll get into that in a minute. There was a big tornado that came through downtown Waco in the early 1950s. I'll get some pictures of the little monument that's there in town for it. And it wiped out a bunch of these old buildings. And I believe the building that drugstore was in is one of the ones that got wiped out by the tornado, if I'm not mistaken. So he was in competition with the Old Corner Drugstore. The Old Corner Drugstore is famous for being the place where Dr. Pepper was invented, which happened right here in Waco, Texas as well. So we'll get into a little more of that later. Okay, I'm now parked where the drugstore used to be and the Old Corner Drugstore used to be. And there was a hotel here, and those businesses were on the bottom floor. I'm in the 300 block of Austin Avenue, and it's now a parking lot. We'll get out and walk around a little bit and see what we can find. Okay, over there's City Hall. There's buildings. Over there's the Chamber of Commerce. And right over here, that's a Roosevelt building. The Roosevelt building was one of the first Hilton hotels built in big hotels anyway. Then it got bought out in the 30s. And there's the Alico building, tallest building in Waco. Right over there, the white dome you see, that's the McLennan County Courthouse. So we're squarely in the downtown area. All right, I'm just going to go through a little walk downtown here and see if we can find some of these other spots. And then after that, I'll get my drone up in the air and we'll take an overview of where all this stuff is. So, walking in downtown Waco, here we go. W.K. Fink's at 601 Austin Avenue, the grocer. I can't find a 601 Austin Avenue, so I gotta think that either it was torn down beforehand or it didn't make it through the tornado as well. But it was right at that corner of 6th Street and Austin, which is smack dab in the middle of downtown Waco, the historic district there. So, but there's no building there to look at anymore. We can look at the area here and we'll move on. Another thing about Fink's is he dabbled in real estate, and there's an area just north of downtown. It's referred to as the Fink subdivision. It's still there. Pretty nice place to live. Would include the area that's now Cameron Park Zoo. It goes right down to the Brazos River there, and I'll do some more digging there and find out exactly where that borders are, and maybe do some drone shots. We can take a look at that. And a building that's actually still there. Emma Winans Jewelry, 520 Austin Avenue, is now a local beer and burger joint, and we'll get some pictures of that. Let's go down to 520 Austin Avenue and see if we can find the only building still standing. Okay, that Halftime Restaurant and Bar just across the street, that is 520 Austin Avenue. I believe that's the old jewelry store. It was common in those days for people to have the business downstairs and actually live upstairs. That's why you see so many of these that are these old buildings that have that upstairs residence above them. Anyways, today it's Halftime Restaurant and Bar, and the building's still there. It survived the tornado and the rest of whatever time threw at it. And it's nice to see at least we got one old building still in service. Walking the other way down Austin Avenue now, and here I'll stop for a second. That is the Alico. Just across the street here is the old Dr. Pepper bottling plant, and it's a museum now. You can go in there and take a look around. They got a lot of nice exhibits, and so the old Dr. Pepper plant. And then right over there you can see the silos. That's what everybody likes to come to Waco for, I guess, now, is those silos. So that's a Chip and Joanna Gaines project, and that's where that is. Okay, that'll conclude my walk through. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to get out my drone. By the way, I am a licensed drone pilot, so I'm legally flying this thing for commercial purposes. And I'm going to just see if I can get up in the air and give us a little aerial tour of what we just looked at. It's about a 2-block area, and then we can also look for that subdivision we were talking about. So let's go. that's it for this one. So until next time, take it easy. We'll see you later. Bye.